The average American family throws away over $1,600 worth of food every single year. $1,600 straight into the trash can. But your mama up in the holler, she threw away almost nothing. And the secret was not some fancy vacuum sealer or a chest freezer the size of a pickup truck. It was 20 simple tricks that most people have completely forgotten. They do not require special equipment, but they will change the way you think about your freezer, your weekly grocery run, and the money quietly draining from your bank account every time you throw away food you could have saved. Let us count down all 20. Number 20, freezing buttermilk in ice cube trays. Most people open a quart of buttermilk for one batch of biscuits, use a cup and a half, then watch the rest go sour in the back of the fridge. Your mama would have poured that leftover buttermilk straight into an ice cube tray and frozen it. Each cube works out to roughly 2 tablespoons, perfect for dropping into cornbread batter, pancake mix, mashed potatoes, or a skillet gravy without defrosting a whole carton. A quart of buttermilk runs about $3.49 at Kroger. If you save just 2 cartons a month from going bad, that is over $80 a year on buttermilk alone. The trick is to leave a small gap at the top of each cube because buttermilk expands when it freezes. Once solid, pop them into a labeled freezer bag and they last 3 months easy. Nobody can taste the difference in a batch of cathead biscuits. Nobody. Number 19, grating lard and butter from frozen. This trick sounds crazy until you try it. Take a block of butter or a chunk of lard straight from the freezer and grate it on a box grater, the coarse side. Those thin ribbons of frozen fat are perfect for biscuits, pie crust, and cobbler toppings. They distribute evenly through flour without melting, which means lighter, flakier results every single time. Old mountain women knew this before any cooking show existed. They kept lard in the root cellar where it stayed cold enough to grate clean. A pound of butter costs around 40–50 cents at Walmart. Buying it on sale and freezing means you never pay full price. More importantly, frozen grated butter means you can make a pie crust on a 95-degree August afternoon without the dough turning into a sticky disaster. Your granny knew this, she just called it common sense. Number 18, freezing wild herbs and garden herbs in bacon grease. Fresh herbs from the grocery store come in those little plastic clamshells that cost $2.50 each and go slimy in the fridge within 4 days. But if you grow your own, or forage ramps, wild onions, or sage from the ridge, this trick stretches them for months. Chop your leftover parsley, rosemary, thyme, or those ramps you pulled in spring, pack them into ice cube trays, cover with saved bacon grease instead of olive oil, freeze. Each cube is a pre-portioned flavor bomb ready to drop straight into a hot cast iron skillet. The fat protects the herbs from freezer burn and keeps the flavor locked in tight. A single bunch of ramps stretched across 6 grease cubes gives you months of that wild mountain flavor instead of 2 weeks. Over a year, this saves roughly $50 to $70 if you cook regularly with fresh herbs. The cubes pop out clean, store flat in a bag, and you never waste another wilting bunch again. Number 17, cornbread batter frozen in muffin tins. This one is pure Appalachian genius, and almost nobody does it. Mix up a big batch of cornbread batter on a Sunday. Pour it into a greased muffin tin. Freeze the tin uncovered until the batter is solid. Pop the frozen discs out and bag them. Now, any night of the week, you drop 2 or 3 frozen cornbread pucks into a hot greased muffin tin and bake for 20 minutes. Fresh cornbread with supper, and you did not mix a single thing. A 5-pound bag of cornmeal costs about $3.50 and makes enough batter for 40 or more muffins. That is roughly 9 cents per cornbread versus $4 for a box of Jiffy Mix that makes 8. Multiply that across a year of suppers and you are saving $60 on cornbread alone. Your cornbread tastes like it was made from scratch because it was made from scratch. You just did the work ahead of time. Number 16, peeling and freezing wild pawpaws and persimmons. When pawpaw season hits in September, most people eat what they can and watch the rest turn to mush on the counter. The secret is to scoop the pulp out, remove the seeds, and freeze the pulp flat in bags. Frozen pawpaw pulp lasts 6 months and is actually better for baking than fresh because the freezing process concentrates the flavor and makes it easier to measure. Same goes for persimmons. Pick them after the first frost when they are soft and sweet. Pulp them and freeze flat. A bag of pawpaw pulp from a specialty store costs $15 or more if you can even find one. Yours is free because you walked into the woods with a bucket. Frozen persimmon pulp makes pudding that tastes like your great-grandmother's kitchen smelled. These are mountain fruits that most of America has forgotten exist, and your freezer keeps them alive all winter. Number 15. Freezing leftover gravy in muffin tins. Biscuit gravy and brown gravy are sacred in mountain cooking, and most families pour the leftovers down the drain or let them congeal in the fridge until they look suspicious. Instead, ladle that leftover gravy into a silicone muffin tin and freeze it. Each portion is roughly the perfect amount for one person's breakfast or supper. Pop them out once frozen and store in a labeled bag. When you want gravy on a Wednesday morning, drop a frozen disc into a hot skillet. It melts in 2 minutes. This is proper gravy, the kind made from sausage drippings and real milk. No packet mix can touch it. A jar of store-bought gravy costs $3 and tastes like wallpaper paste compared to the real thing. Freezing your leftover gravy means nothing gets wasted and you eat like it is Sunday every day of the week. Number 14. Pre-portioned smoothie bags for the kids. Here is a trick that turns a healthy breakfast into a 90-second job. On a Sunday, line up 5 or 7 freezer bags. Into each one, put a handful of frozen berries, half a banana, a spoonful of oats, and a dollop of yogurt. Seal and freeze flat. Every morning, dump one bag into a blender with milk or apple juice. Blend for 30 seconds. Done. No chopping, no measuring, no fruit going brown in the bowl by Wednesday. A week's worth of smoothie bags costs about $5 in ingredients. A single smoothie from a drive-thru or juice bar costs $6 or more. That is one bought smoothie versus 7 homemade ones for less money. The bags stack flat, take up almost no freezer space, and mean your kids actually eat something decent before school instead of grabbing a $2 gas station honey bun. Number 13. Freezing egg whites and yolks separately. When a recipe calls for yolks only, most people pour the whites straight down the drain. That is money in the garbage. Egg whites freeze perfectly in ice cube trays. 1 cube equals 1 white. Label the bag with the number of whites and the date. When you need them for meringue, angel food cake, or an egg white scramble, defrost what you need. They whip up exactly the same as fresh. Yolks need a little help. Stir in either a pinch of salt or a half teaspoon of sugar per yolk before freezing to stop them going gummy. Label which you used so you know whether the yolk is headed for custard or egg noodles. A dozen eggs costs about $3.50 right now. Wasting 4 whites from a recipe is like throwing $1.15 in the trash can. Stop doing it. Number 12. The open freeze method for garden vegetables. Here is why your store-bought frozen peas pour out individually from the bag, but your home frozen green beans come out as one solid brick. Commercial freezers use a technique called individually quick frozen. You can copy it in your kitchen. Spread whatever you are freezing, green beans, corn kernels, diced peppers, sliced squash, in a single layer on a lined baking sheet. Freeze uncovered for 2 hours, then transfer to a bag. Every piece stays separate. You can pour out exactly what you need and put the rest back. This works for almost everything that comes out of a summer garden. Blanched half runner beans, sliced okra, chopped tomatoes, diced zucchini. Grow it or buy it cheap at a roadside stand when it is in season. Open freeze it and you have bags of pre-prepared vegetables that beat anything in the frozen aisle at a fraction of the cost. A bushel of half runners from the farmer's market at $25 open frozen gives you enough green beans to last until March. Number 11. Freezing cooked rice and grits. People are scared of reheating rice because of food safety warnings, but the truth is simple. Cool cooked rice within an hour. Portion it into freezer bags, flatten and freeze. Reheat from frozen in the microwave with a splash of water for 2 minutes. Perfectly fluffy rice every time. No waiting 20 minutes for a fresh pot. Same goes for grits. Cook a big pot of stone ground grits. Portion and freeze flat. Reheat with a little milk or butter and you have creamy grits in 3 minutes on a workday morning. A 2-pound bag of stone ground grits from a mill costs about $4 and makes 15 or more servings. Having frozen grits and rice ready to go means you can throw together a real meal in 15 minutes on any weeknight. The key is cooling it quickly and reheating it thoroughly. Follow those 2 rules and frozen rice and grits are perfectly safe. Number 10. Freezing homemade tomato sauce in portions. A big batch of homemade tomato sauce costs about $4 in ingredients and makes 10 portions. A jar of ragu costs $3.50 for 3 portions. The math is embarrassing. Make a huge pot on a Sunday. Onions, garlic, canned tomatoes, basil, a pinch of sugar, a glug of olive oil. Ladle it into freezer bags or old containers. Freeze flat. Each portion defrosts in the microwave in 4 minutes or in a pan in 10. Over a year, cooking sauce from scratch once a month and freezing it saves over $90 compared to buying jars. The flavor difference is not subtle, it is enormous. Your spaghetti tastes like somebody actually stood at the stove and cooked, instead of twisting a lid off a jar and feeling vaguely guilty about it. Number 9. Stale bread and biscuits into frozen breadcrumbs. Every stale heel, every dry biscuit, every end piece the kids will not touch gets blitzed in a food processor and frozen in a bag. Shake the bag once a week to keep the crumbs loose. You now have a permanent supply of breadcrumbs for fried chicken, fried green tomatoes, squash casserole, stuffing, and any dish that needs a crunchy golden top. A canister of store-bought breadcrumbs costs $2.50. Yours are free because they come from bread you already paid for. The flavor is better too. Real breadcrumbs from leftover biscuits and cornbread have texture and character that store-bought dust cannot match. Keep a dedicated bag in the freezer and add to it every time something goes stale. By Thanksgiving, you will have enough for a cornbread dressing that costs nothing extra. Number 8. Freezing tomato paste in tablespoon dollops. Here is a trick that stops you throwing away half a can of tomato paste every single week. Open the can, drop tablespoon-sized blobs onto a lined baking sheet. Freeze them solid, transfer to a bag. Now you have pre-measured portions of tomato paste ready to toss into any dish. A can of Hunt's tomato paste costs 79 cents. Most recipes call for 1 tablespoon. Without this trick, the rest sits in the fridge growing a fur coat within 5 days. With this trick, that 79-cent can lasts 2 months and adds restaurant-quality depth to stews, chili, and soups. 1 tablespoon of good tomato paste transforms a pot of soup beans. It adds a richness you cannot get any other way. Restaurants know this. Home cooks forget it because the can always goes bad before they use it up. Problem solved. Number 7. Freezing bone broth from scratch. Homemade bone broth from a roast chicken carcass or a pile of pork bones costs literally nothing. The bones are scraps you have already paid for. Dump them in a big pot with an onion, a couple carrots, celery, peppercorns, and a splash of apple cider vinegar to pull the minerals out. Simmer low for 4 to 6 hours or leave it in the slow cooker overnight. Strain it, cool it, freeze it in ice cube trays for small amounts and in quart containers for soups. Each cube adds body and flavor to rice, gravy, or pan sauces. Larger portions become the base for chicken and dumplings that costs almost nothing. A carton of bone broth from the store costs $5 for 32 ounces. A carcass you are about to throw away produces nearly double that. Over a year, making broth from bones and freezing it saves $60 to $90 easily. Store-bought broth tastes like warm dishwater compared to the real thing. Homemade bone broth has gelatin, richness, and a depth that makes everything it touches taste like it simmered all day. Number 6. Freezing meal portions in saved containers. Save every plastic takeout container and every Cool Whip tub you get. Wash them out. They are free, microwave safe, freezer safe, and stackable. When you cook a big batch of anything, chili, stew, chicken and dumplings, vegetable soup, portion it into those containers. Label with the contents and date. Stack them in the freezer. You now have a library of homemade ready meals that cost a fraction of store-bought frozen dinners and taste 100 times better. A staff frozen meal costs $4 to $6. Your homemade frozen version costs about $1.50 a portion. If you replace just 2 frozen dinners a week with your own homemade versions, that is $250 to $400 saved per year. That is not an exaggeration. That is arithmetic. Appalachian women have been doing this with Cool Whip containers since Cool Whip was invented, and they were right about it. Number 5. Freezing whipped cream in dollops. Heavy cream goes bad fast once opened, but if you whip it to soft peaks first, Then pipe or spoon portions onto a lined baking sheet and freeze them. You have instant cream portions for hot cocoa, cobbler, and pie. Pop the frozen dollops into a bag once solid. Drop one onto a warm bowl of apple stack cake, a slice of chess pie, or a mug of hot chocolate, and it melts down perfectly. A pint of heavy cream costs about $3.50 a ton, goes off within 4 days of opening. This trick means every drop gets used. No more pouring half a carton down the drain because it turned before you could finish it. Number 4. Freezing ginger and garlic whole. Fresh ginger dries out or goes moldy within a week. Garlic sprouts and turns bitter if you do not use it fast enough. Both freeze whole and grate beautifully from frozen on a microplane or the fine side of a box grater. No peeling needed for ginger. The skin grates away to nothing. Garlic cloves can be frozen individually and grated straight into hot oil or melted butter. A head of garlic costs 50 cents and lasts months in the freezer instead of weeks on the counter. A knob of ginger costs 75 cents and does the same. The flavor is sharper and cleaner than those jars of pre-minced garlic that cost $3 and taste like a chemistry set. Freeze them whole, grate them frozen. Better flavor, less waste, less money. Number 3. Buying markdown meat and freezing immediately. This is the trick grocery stores quietly hate. Every evening, Walmart, Kroger, Food City, and Ingles mark down fresh meat 30 to 50% or more because it reaches its sell-by date the next day. That does not mean it has gone bad. It means it needs eating or freezing today. A pack of chicken thighs marked down from $7 to $2.80 is perfectly safe to freeze the second you walk through the door. It will last 3 to 4 months in the freezer at full quality. Families who shop the markdown section and freeze strategically cut their meat bill in half. Some save over $150 a month. Grocery chains have actually started adjusting the timing of their markdowns and moving them to less visible coolers because too many smart shoppers were cleaning out the shelves before full-price customers could. They want you to pay $7. Your freezer says you are paying $2.80. This is how mountain families have always stretched $1. They just did it with a smokehouse instead of a chest freezer. Number 2. The Sunday Batch Cook and Freeze System. This is not a single trick. It is a system that ties every other trick on this list together. Spend 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon cooking 3 or 4 big recipes. A pot of chili, a tray of spaghetti sauce, a batch of chicken and dumplings, a big pot of soup beans. Portion everything into containers. Freeze the lot. You now have 15 to 20 individual meals ready to go for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Total ingredient cost for a full week of lunches and dinners comes to roughly $20 to $25. Compare that to buying frozen meals, grabbing fast food at lunch, or ordering pizza because nobody plans supper. The average American family spends $270 a week on food. Batch cooking and freezing can bring that down to $150 or less without sacrificing quality or variety. The 3 hours you invest on Sunday saves you hours of cooking, cleaning, and staring into the fridge wondering what to make every single evening. Number 1. The freezer inventory list on your phone. The single most powerful freezer trick has nothing to do with what you freeze. It is about knowing what you have already frozen. Take 5 minutes to type every item in your freezer into the Notes app on your phone. Update it every time something goes in or comes out. That is it. This tiny habit eliminates duplicate buying, prevents food waste, and makes meal planning effortless. You are standing in Walmart wondering whether to grab ground beef. Check your phone. You have 4 packs already flat frozen and ready. You are staring at the chest freezer at 5 o'clock with no clue what to cook. Check your phone. There is a container of chicken and dumplings from 2 weeks ago and frozen biscuits from last Sunday. Supper in 10 minutes. The families saving the most money on food are not the ones with the fanciest kitchens or the biggest freezers. They are the ones who simply know what they own. Here is your challenge. Pick 3 tricks from this list and try them this week. Just 3. The flat freeze ground meat, the herb and bacon grease cubes, the markdown meat run, then come back and tell me how much you saved. I already know the answer because I started doing this 6 months ago and my grocery bill dropped by 1/3. That is not a made-up number. That is what happens when you stop treating your freezer like a graveyard and start treating it like a savings account. Your mama did not have a YouTube channel or a smartphone app. She had a chest freezer in the basement and the good sense to use every scrap of food that came into her kitchen. That is not nostalgia, that is wisdom, and it still works. Drop your favorite trick in the comments. I want to know which one changes your kitchen first.